History tends to favor the loud, the conquerors, the firebrands. But sometimes it's the quiet teachers, the ones who walk barefoot, speak softly, and insist, against all odds, that gentleness is strength, and it is who leaves the deepest mark. Parshvanatha is one of those names the history books outside India often skip over. Yet more than 2,500 years ago, he taught ideas so radical, so quietly subversive, that their ripples are still felt today in every conversation about nonviolence, ethical living, and spiritual liberation. If you've heard of Jainism, or Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara and contemporary of the Buddha, you're already in Parshvanatha's philosophical shadow. Because long before Jainism became an organized tradition, before Buddhism took shape, Parshvanatha was walking the dusty roads of northern India, preaching restraint, compassion, and the possibility of transcending suffering, not through divine favor, but through personal discipline. The details of his life sit, as ancient lives often do, at the intersection of history and legend. Jain tradition places his birth around 877 BCE in Varanasi, a city so old that even by his time, its stones had seen generations rise and fall. His father was a king, his upbringing royal, his path seemingly destined for power. But as with so many great teachers, comfort didn't suit him. At 30, Parshvanatha renounced worldly life. Wealth, privilege, status, all abandoned in favor of an ascetic path. For the next 70 years, it said he wandered, taught, meditated. His goal wasn't conquest or fame. It was to show others how to cross the turbulent river of life, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth that Jainism calls samsara. In the Jain tradition, Parshvanatha is called a Tirthankara. In English, a ford maker, not a deity, not a prophet in the Abrahamic sense, but a teacher who leaves behind a path for others to follow. 24 Tirthankaras mark the Jain spiritual lineage, each rediscovering the principles of liberation in their own time. Parshvanatha, the 23rd, laid the foundations that Mahavira, a century or two later, would build upon. But Parshvanatha wasn't merely a placeholder in history. His teachings stand on their own. Perhaps his most enduring contribution is the set of ethical principles he taught, simple, direct, but profoundly demanding. Nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, non-possessiveness. Not revolutionary by modern standards, perhaps. But imagine saying, in a world of ritual animal sacrifice, rigid hierarchies, and violence sanctified by custom, that every life matters. That killing, any killing, binds the soul tighter to suffering. That the greatest conquest is over one's own desires. Ahimsa, non-violence, is often discussed today in the context of Gandhi, civil rights, or pacifism, but for Parshvanatha, it wasn't politics, it was metaphysics. Life, in all its forms, is sacred. Every insect, every blade of grass, every being caught in the wheel of existence. To harm another, even carelessly, is to harm oneself. And Ahimsa wasn't alone. Truthfulness, because deception corrodes relationships and clouds the mind. Non-stealing, because taking what isn't freely given breeds attachment and injustice. Non-possessiveness, because ownership, clinging, accumulation, these are chains disguised as security. These weren't commandments to fearfully obey, but disciplines to consciously practice. Liberation, Parshvanatha taught, it doesn't arrive from outside. It's cultivated, slowly, through conduct, restraint, and awareness. Later, Mahavira would formalize a fifth vow, celibacy. But even before that, Parshvanatha's four vows represented a complete ethical vision, a blueprint for living lightly, compassionately, and with integrity in a tangled world. Of course, no teacher walks through history without opposition. Parshvanatha's life, like so many of his time, isn't preserved in neat biographies, but in parables and cosmic dramas. One of the most enduring is his rivalry with Kamatha, a figure said to have followed Parshvanatha across multiple lifetimes, driven by resentment and jealousy. The legend describes Kamatha performing violent rituals, sacrificing animals in pursuit of power or spiritual merit. Parshvanatha, witnessing this, intervenes not with force, but with reason, condemning the brutality and saving the creatures. Kamatha becomes an archetype, the stubborn ego, the karmic baggage that haunts us life after life. Resisting change, Parshvanatha becomes the quiet defiance of compassion in the face of cruelty. It's easy to dismiss such stories as myth, but their philosophical heart remains relevant. They remind us that nonviolence, truthfulness, ethical living, these aren't easy paths. They provoke resistance, both within and without. They challenge entrenched habits, power structures, even our own comfort. What makes Parshvanatha remarkable isn't merely his teaching, but his insistence that philosophy isn't something discussed in courts or debated over manuscripts. It's walked every day. You see it in the Jain monks who even now sweep the path before them as they walk, lest they crush an unseen insect. In the lay people who refuse to eat after dark, who live simply, who extend compassion beyond humans to all beings. It's tempting, from the outside, to see these practices as excessive. But when you consider the scale of suffering, the vast web of life we so casually damage, suddenly, Parshvanatha's radical gentleness feels less extreme and more necessary. His influence didn't end with his lifetime, or even within Jainism. His emphasis on nonviolence and renunciation fed into broader Indian philosophy, echoing through the Upanishads, prefiguring elements of Buddhism, and much later, inspiring movements for social justice and animal rights. And yet, he remains a quiet figure in global memory. Perhaps fittingly so. He wasn't a king, a conqueror, a miracle worker demanding devotion. He was a teacher, a philosopher, a man who believed that the deepest revolutions happen not through force, but through restraint, not through noise, but through unwavering compassion. In an age that rewards aggression, excess, and spectacle, Parshvanatha's message still hums quietly beneath the surface. Live gently, speak truthfully, take only what is freely given, own less, and harm nothing. It won't make you famous. It might not even make you comfortable, but it might just make you free.